Welcome to a special NBA Finals finale edition of the Good Word with Goodwill. I'm your host, Vincent Goodwill, here at Ball Arena, where there are a bunch of people just throwing confetti on themselves like they are children with balloons. Sitting about 15 feet over from me is the great Devine. Dan, how are you doing on this fine Monday evening?
I'm doing really well because I have this confetti matches my suit. It matches my complexion. It's really bringing out my eyes, I think. And more than any of that, we have a new NBA champion and an end to a pretty wild season, a pretty wild postseason, and we all get to go home.
Yeah, we all get to go home, and I wish these people in front of us would go home. But that's to each their own. Like, the Denver Nuggets clinched their first ever NBA championship tonight with a nail-biting, not quite inevitable 95-89. I think it was 95-89, right? The final?
94.
94-89, excuse me. 94-89 win over those damned, stubborn Miami Heat. It was weird after the game. Michael Malone immediately went to, hey, we're going to be back here. And I'm like, hey, enjoy this moment right now because you had to gut this win out tonight. This game, Dan, was in the mud. Miami, I think, shot 35%. Denver shot 45%. I think Denver at one point was 2 of 20 from three before Michael Porter Jr. took the lid off. It was just an amazingly competitive game from both ends. You walk away with a measure of respect for both and maybe a little more admiration for Denver's ability to get into the mud. What stuck out for you tonight as this game started to sort of wear on and take its own shape?
What I wound up focusing on is like, this is if this is going to be, if Miami's going to win this, they're going to win it their way. So that's, again, the low possession count, stringing out every play, playing deep into the clock, hunting that last final shot, doing scrambling, like busting their tails, getting back in transition. Everything was hard. And it was hard both ways. The Nuggets had their own adversity that kind of started with where early foul trouble for Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon. So their rotations were off. DeAndre Jordan made an appearance. I did not have that on my NBA Finals bingo card. Right. An early game appointment for DeAndre Jordan. But it was like, this feels like the Heat's game. And I think it's a testament to Denver and what the team that they've become. Maybe they weren't this team in September when they broke training camp, but the team they became, that they can say, we'll take your style and we're going to win it anyway. Because when it comes to in the mud slog of a game, we have the biggest, baddest dude on the block, and we're going to beat you over the head with him. And they were able to do that again tonight. Nikola Jokic, 28 and 16, 12 of 16 from the floor. Just every time the Heat going into their zone, he's posting up on a wing, getting something good in the middle. Every time they needed a bucket, clear out, give him a post up on the wing. He's going to be able to go get straight to the bucket, put somebody in the stanchion. And that was an answer that Miami never was able to solve. They never were able to handle that.
Yeah, it was amazing, the DeAndre Jordan minutes, which actually culminated. He wound up getting a pretty key block shot.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like there were three different games being played. You know, early on when Denver jumped out and Miami could not take advantage of the game that Denver had put in front of them. And then Miami really getting their footing at the end of the first quarter, going into the second quarter, kind of controlling the game, going to the foul line, everything else. It just felt like a grinded out Miami Heat style game, a game that they don't play at home, a game that they only really kind of play on the road with their backs to the wall. Their shooters did not give them the boost that we thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be one of those games where, okay, you guys shot 43% against Boston in the conference finals. You're shooting 36% entering this series. I was thinking at some point the law of averages were going to turn around for the Gabe Vincents, for the Duncan Robinsons, for the Max Struses. All they needed was one guy in addition to Jimmy Bam, who once again has one of those moments where he has great games and you're like, dude, dunk on the guy. You know, like it just right. Felt like that, in addition to everything that Jimmy Butler, like his struggles until the fourth quarter, where at the 5-minute mark, you just felt like he got his legs underneath him. And then he started hitting shots and you're thinking, I don't know if you were thinking, like I was thinking, oh crap, I'm canceling my flight home and I'm going to Miami tomorrow for game 6. Like it felt like that. Did it ever feel like Denver truly lost control of the game? And I almost felt like that they were always sort of not quite stalking the game, but it was never leaving their arm's reach, even when it wasn't being played on their terms.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think part of that is just you got the feeling that if Denver started to could get out of its own way a little bit, they would be able, the early fouls, which a lot of them, I know that the crowd here at Ball Arena was losing their mind about a lot of the calls, but a lot of them were hacks. A lot of them were legitimate, seemed like legitimate calls. Maybe it wasn't always equitable going both ways, but the foul trouble, the way that disrupted the rotations and the way that it made it hard for the offense to get on track. It's like if you remove that, you clean that up, you stop throwing the ball over the place. There were a lot of early turnovers that led to Miami fast break points, sort of giving them that lifeline. You clean some of that stuff up. You get a full second half of Nikola Jokic, which they were able to do once he played literally the entire second half. And it was just like, if you get out of your own way a little bit, you'll be able to get this game, if not back on your own terms, at least to be able to execute enough to take it on Miami's terms. And I think that we wound up seeing, in the first half, it was that, the Strus, let me see, I had this written down here. It was Strus, Lowry, Martin, and Duncan Robinson combined for 25 points of 9 for 20 shooting. So that's what you needed. They needed some other source of it. It wasn't one guy making 5 threes, but those guys were contributing a pretty significant amount to that first half lead, helping Bam out while Jimmy was struggling. And it was just like, well, can you keep that going? And B, can Denver find a way to just keep its main guys on the court? And when they were able to do that, they were able to wrest control back of the game.
Yeah, we're going to get to Nikola Jokic later. Trust me, we are not going to forget the Bill Russell NBA Finals MVP, the validation, I guess one would say, and everything else. But I felt like, especially Michael Porter Jr., you're talking about a guy who persevered as we are persevering.
We are persevering right now, Vincent Goodwill, you and me.
We are persevering through all of this. And, yeah. We are persevering.
Michael Porter Jr. could not buy a three-pointer. You could feel the arena was like clenching and exhaling with him the entire time. But to your point, persevering and finding other ways to impact the game, attacking the glass, pushing the ball in transition, making some full speed off the dribble moves that honestly I did not think Michael Porter Jr. had in his bag, and defending with activity, with length. You sort of saw him become what Michael Malone has been asking him all postseason long, all series long, all career long. We don't have specialists on this team. If you're not getting your shot going, find another way to impact the game. Never was Michael Porter Jr.'s strong suit, but here we are. He winds up being an NBA champion in large part, or at least in part, because he was able to find his way to impacting the game in those other ways.
And here, a word about Michael Malone, because I think he comes off as like brutish. You know what I mean? He comes across as not quite Norman Dale, you know what I mean?
Right.
Not quite Jim Boylan. Like, he's one of those type of dudes. But he definitely comes off not as encouraging as he actually is. You know what I mean? Like, I saw him on the floor after the game. He pulled Michael Porter Jr. aside and was just telling him how proud he was of him and sticking with him, and how much, Michael Porter Jr. just meant to him. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. In addition to saying, hey, we'll be back next year and all that other stuff. And I think I don't know if you believe in this, but I have a theory on NBA coaches. There's 5 to 6 good ones, 5 to 6 bad ones, and a bunch of dudes in the middle.
Right.
Most dudes are honestly in the middle that we say are good. We just don't know it. We're watching a lot of times.
Right.
But I think Michael Malone, just from the standpoint of, he talked so much, Dan, about the Kroenke family sticking with him, and they've gone through different front office changes over the past few years, from Tim Connolly to Arturas Karnisovas to now Calvin Booth, and they've all stuck with him, and they've stuck with him for a reason and watched this team grow. It almost feels like an old school sort of way of growing that we used to watch the NBA. I'm a little bit older than you, but the way that I grew up watching NBA basketball, where a team would steady climb and climb and climb, and then all of a sudden you look up and they're there, but not before they have serious doubts, not before there's some injuries, not before there is some real adversity. And I felt like, even though this run didn't have a whole lot of adversity, they romped through the Western Conference and romped through this series, I felt like there's a lot of character built there, and I felt like a lot of that is Michael Malone.
1,000%. I mean, you're looking at it. So they make the Western Conference Finals in the bubble. Oh, sorry, even go back before that. They lose a Game 7 on this floor to the Portland Trail Blazers, right? They go and they make the Western Conference Finals in the bubble. Murray gets hurt. Porter gets hurt again. You have these sort of this 2-year in the desert kind of situation where they believed what they could be. They saw that glimpse of what that team looked like right after they made the trade for Aaron Gordon. Only like 8 games and I think 117 minutes of that core 4 together. And they were lights out. They absolutely blew the doors off. Michael Malone talks pretty frequently about the game that they went into LA and they went to the Clippers and they just took it to the Clippers with their new lineup, with Aaron Gordon at the 4, able to guard up on Kawhi Leonard, and said, like, we have a championship team now. And then to have to wait for 2 years to see it again and to get eliminated by the Suns and then to get eliminated by the Warriors and say, well, when is it going to be our time? When are we going to have this all together? It takes a really strong leadership presence to be able to keep a team locked in and focused in that way and believing and pushing in the right direction. And Michael Malone deserves a hell of a lot of credit for that. I will say also, though, and I know we're going to get to him later, Michael Malone is also from the Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr school, where he's saying, whatever credit I will deserve here, we got to point to the guy who is the leader, the one who sets the example, does everything the way it's supposed to be done, and everybody else follows. And Nikola Jokic proved that in spades this postseason.
Coaches say that, but when you see their salaries out here now, they ain't going to be saying that when it comes time to go to the negotiating table. I'm going to tell you that right now.
What they're going to be saying is, let me talk to my man Monty and see what he had going on. And then now me and you are going to have a different kind of conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even through the interim, you add a Jeff Green, you add a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who I think was really a stabilizing force throughout the game. And he's never been a vocal guy. Like, I covered him as a rookie. He barely spoke a couple words at a time, stuff like that. But he's really coming to his own as a vet. And he was the one guy on this team that was a pre-existing champion. He was part of that Lakers team that beat the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals in 2020. So he knew what he was getting himself into, when the transaction from Washington to Denver, happened. With the trade, I think that was the Monte Morris trade.
Yeah, and it was there were some people at the time who were kind of like, oh, I don't know, you give up, maybe the best backup point guard in the NBA, is that the right move? And I thought that was crazy on its face, because if you are drawing up a 2-guard in a lab to play all like low usage catch and shoot, defend everybody in the backcourt guy, and you put him between Murray and Jokic, it's like it couldn't be a better fit. And it's similar to what we were talking about with Michael Porter Jr. His shot was not falling all that often in this series, but timely stops, huge stops in game 4 on Jimmy and Bam, strips down on them when they were isoing on him. Hustle plays, getting back to break up, Jimmy run out dunks, maybe something that would have helped him get his rhythm, and then a couple of big shots down the stretch. KCP gave them absolutely everything they could have asked for. That trade goes down as an absolute slam dunk, an absolute, that with the Gordon trade, with the Bruce Brown signing, like, these are championship defining moves. So Tim Connolly gets his share of the credit. Calvin Booth gets his share of the credit.
Absolutely.
And there's championships beget an awful lot of credit. There's going to be a lot of it going around here in Denver.
Absolutely. And even before we go back, to Miami, I guess we can go back to Miami now before we talk about Nikola Jokic. What did you make of Jimmy Butler's night? Because for 3 quarters, his legs looked dead. He would swear to the public. He would swear to the public in front of everybody and privately, my ankle is fine. And then you see him walking around limping, and then you're saying you're playing 40 minutes a game, and then you're defending Jamal Murray and everything else. Like, whether that's fatigue or whatever it was, he didn't come alive until he came alive, and they were barely hanging on by like duct tape and the almighty before Jimmy Butler started to come alive. And that's when you felt like, okay, maybe they have a chance because their premier guy has turned on. He wound up, I think, with 21 points. And when you start off 2 for 10, he looked like he was going full John Starks. He didn't have a feel for the game at all.
Come on, man. John Starks, like childhood favorite of your boy. You can't hit me with that right now. Brutal. I got confetti all over me, and you're hitting me with the John Starks. I can't have it.
Look, if you grew up a Knicks fan, you're used to failure.
That's exactly. I'm used to getting to the absolute, the top of the roller coaster ride, and then the roller coaster ride stops, and you actually just go back down the other way. You don't get to actually enjoy it.
What's that like? Is that Reggie Miller or Michael Jordan or
all of the above, man? What? Listen,
or is that the league office? Is that the league office with the with the suspensions in 1997? Yes, I'm going in the crates, John Gennaro. Is that what it's like to be a fan of a team that is close but not quite close? Do you get PTSD? Is that why you relate so much to the Denver Nuggets? Because you feel like they are the marijuana high infused version, the CBD version of your youth. Is that what that is?
Well, if that's the case, then maybe greener pastures lie ahead for the Knicks. Who knows? It took that. See what I did? You see how I do? But yeah, to back to Jimmy, the thing that it was the most telling aspect of it, and he, again, as you said, will not cop to any issues. There we go. I got some magnums in the back. Got some champagne flowing. Jimmy would not test Nikola Jokic in the paint. He would go. He would drive and kick. He would force it. He would get a switch. Jamal Murray, KCP, whoever he felt comfortable attacking. He was able to get into the paint. He would get 2 feet in the paint routinely. But when Jokic stepped up and protected the rim, he was not able. He wouldn't go up. He would not go up over the top of it. When he did, he felt like he was not confident with his touch. When he was going up after the fact, like he was always looking to kick out those jump passes to the perimeter. And Denver's perimeter defenders were just like, we're staying home. We don't think you can beat us this way. Max Strus, if you want to go and run off a handoff, but we're forcing you inside and you're going to take a floater, go ahead. Try to beat us with 20 of those. We'll take our chances. So Jimmy, that feeling, and I know you had asked him about this multiple times in the postseason, this, play the right way, right? Do you ever feel like maybe you kind of don't need to not play the right way and just go and get yours, because that's going to be the thing that opens things up when the defense is just staying at home on your shooters? And he kept saying, no, I'm going to keep playing the right way. And that, until those last few minutes, and even those last few minutes, it was him pulling up, right? It was him, getting more lift on his threes than he's had in felt like 2 weeks.
Yes,
or maybe even longer than that. Maybe since the ankle roll at the end of early in the Knicks series, or maybe at the very least the beginning of the Celtics series. It was not going at the rim. It was him pulling up, and I think that's the difference. When Jimmy Butler is right fully and feels comfortable and has a plan of attack, he's getting to the rim and he's getting to his spots, and we really rarely saw that. Almost still pulled the rabbit out of a hat. Led late, get down to the final minute. Did not, the last couple of his shots were more prayers, sort of dart throw aims, than they were, taking with confidence that you could believe they would get him down. And when those started to clank awry, when Kyle Lowry wasn't able to convert those last licks kind of shots.
That one turnover in the middle of the lane where he got caught, where he picked up his dribble and he got caught, and there was nothing there. I thought he should have called a timeout. I thought Spo maybe should have called a timeout, but Jimmy is a low turnover ball player. He doesn't put himself in positions where, that's why people say, oh, maybe you should take a bad shot. He's not a type of player that does that. So even when I asked him, I knew what the answer was going to be. When I think I asked him after game 4, like, hey, your guys aren't making shots. Do you feel like you have to take a more aggressive tone? And he said exactly that. But that turnover, the rare Jimmy Butler turnover, that was huge. Tyler Hero, Eric Spoelstra gave that up way too easy to us. In the pregame, he gave that up way too easy. Normally, he is the KGB. We are going to see what Tyler feels like after warmups. He said, all hands on deck. He's available. We're going to go through and see, And it turned out to be exactly what I thought. Someone told me from the Heat, but right before we left practice the other day, said he's not even close. So then to see him a day later, I'm like, yeah, my spidey senses were going off and saying this is a little something. But when you look at the numbers, because we're going to get to Jokic now, Kevin Love 1 of 4, Gabe Vincent 0 of 4, Max Strus 1 of 6, Caleb Martin 0 of 4 from 3. That's 2 of 18. And it's remarkable that even with all of that, they were close enough to sniff a win. They were close enough to sending this thing back to Miami for a game 6. They just could not get over the hump once they were trailing, and you could feel the momentum, especially after that Michael Porter Jr. 3 in transition. That no. Oh, yes. Wow, he made that one. That type of thing. Of course, that would be the 3 that he made in the night that Denver was struggling. So, Dan, here's where we give all the platitudes, all the deserved platitudes. He is certified. He is everything that everybody said that he was. Even me, like, I firmly believe that Nikola Jokic is as great as he looked. The only thing that was missing was, can you do it in June? Can you do it where the stakes are the highest?
Right.
It's almost unfair in a way to hold someone to that kind of standard, Dan. But the way that we've evaluated players in NBA history was, you can do all these great things during the regular season. You can even have playoff moments. But until you do it in the finals, until you lead your team to a championship. Remember, LeBron James had been a 3-time MVP before he had won his first championship. It was after his third MVP, but you know what I mean? And then he was finally validated. Jokic didn't force his game tonight. He was 12 of 16, 30 points, 14 boards, 7 assists, didn't average a triple-double through the playoffs, didn't freaking need to. But you made this point earlier, so I'm going to toss it to you here. They treated him like he was the boogeyman in the paint. Like, he exerted a whole lot of effort in there. He wasn't necessarily the rim protector, but maybe he was just wide enough. You know what I mean? Maybe he was just the Marshmallow Man from the first Ghostbusters movie way back in the day. You know what I mean? Where
he's not a Marshmallow Man anymore, dude. That guy's got abs. He's found the kid that was drinking the 3 liters of Coke a day.
Abs of what, Dan?
I don't know. Abs of championship medal. I don't know.
There we go.
But yeah,
abs of Moet. That's what it is.
After the next couple of days, yeah, maybe that and Michelob Ultra, which Michelob Ultra, I'm finding out sponsored their locker room stuff. Also, kind of interesting though, seeing Jokic walking around with a giant bottle of that, which is what Jimmy Butler endorses, right? So it's kind of like, I drink your milkshake a little bit. But
is that a Khalees reference?
It is. There will be blood. I feel a competition in me. I think Jimmy Butler and Daniel Plainview would get along pretty well. But Jokic, yeah, I was able to write something about him getting the Finals MVP and sort of trying to contextualize what this run was for him. And the numbers are insane. It's obviously a unanimous Finals MVP. Yep. All 11 votes went his way. He averaged 30.2 points, 14 rebounds, 7.2 assists per game in the Finals, 58.3 from the field, 42.1 from 3, 83.8 at the line. He led the entire postseason in points, rebounds, and assists. He becomes the 11th player ever to win multiple regular season MVPs and a Finals MVP. The other 10 names on that list, you don't have to say their whole names because it's Kareem, Larry, Wilt, Duncan, LeBron, Magic, Michael, Moses, Giannis, and Steph. That's the company he's in right now. And so he might have been stamped in a lot of people's eyes before this. There will always be people who will eye test the defense, who will say, it doesn't look exactly the same as it did with, the great players of years past, especially the wings and the primary ball handlers in that way. It looks different, but we've seen different dominate now in several straight postseasons. Giannis looks different from Steph, looks different from Jokic, but dominance by any other name looks like you're holding up the big gold ball at the end of it. And that's what Jokic did this postseason. When we, it's all said and done in terms of, your advanced numbers or your box score numbers, the impact, the eye test, the whatever. Eric Spoelstra called this guy one of one in terms of what he can do for impacting winning. Spoelstra doesn't come by that kind of compliment lightly. He's seen a lot. He's had the guys on the other side of his team and the ones that he's coached. This has been a special run. Jokic is going to be a Hall of Famer. He's 8 years into his career. It's gonna happen. And the question now is just, how high do we go? Michael Porter Jr., I don't know how high he went before he got to the press room, but when he got up there, he said, I don't know how you could argue that there's any better big man ever. Slow down, Mike. I love you. It's a big night for you, but the more he goes,
slow your roll.
Exactly. But the further he goes, the more the more individual accolades he accumulates, the more deep playoff runs they make. They're able to keep these finals runs going. He's going to put himself in some awfully rare air, and he's already on his way.
Yeah, I mean, look, where we can start is by saying he's a historical basketball player. We can start by simply saying he is a man who will be etched in history, that you will not be able to tell the story of basketball, a reasonable story about basketball, without talking about this guy. And we can kind of leave it there, at least, and we don't have to contextualize, oh, he's better than this guy, better than that guy.
Yeah.
Like,
not placing him on a list just yet.
Yeah, I think there's a rush to do that. And this is not me saying this to denigrate him, because he's 28 and he's got such a long runway ahead of him if he wants to. Let me put that there. If he wants the runway. But the number one thing that strikes me is this. He doesn't scare. And I think and I believe we've seen guys who've come up short and come up short not in their own way. We've seen the James Hardens of the world. We've seen the Joel Embiids of the world. Like, if you're a two-way player, right, then you got to bring it. If Joel Embiid's advantage over Nikola Jokic was that he's an absolute cyclone to deal with in the paint. Okay, cool. That means you have to be that all the time, right? Nikola Jokic is Nikola Jokic all the time. I went through this exercise. I was talking to Bomani the other day. When we were going through this exercise of who could stop Nikola Jokic. And I mean through history. I literally don't mean like now, because there's nobody now. Like Anthony Davis played the best defense and best ball of his life and was lunch meat to Nikola Jokic. You know what I mean? Bam Adebayo played, some of his best and most consistent ball on the defensive end of the floor. Didn't matter. There's only one guy that I can think of that has the size, that has the strength, and the mobility to be able to stay with Jokic on all points of the floor. Do you want to take a guess? And this is a modern NBA player.
It's a modern NBA player?
It's a modern NBA player.
Okay. KG?
No, I think he would be too strong for Kevin Garnett.
Okay.
But you're close in that era. I will tell you who it is. I think Tim Duncan would have the strength to stay with him and be quick enough to where Nikola Jokic ain't the quickest dude. He can get to wherever he needs to get to. But the fact that we're talking about arguably the greatest defensive big man this side of Hakeem Olajuwon, when you talk about modern NBA history, being the one guy, and I'm not even sure Olajuwon could really bother him because Olajuwon was a little bit on the shorter side. Like Olajuwon is closer to 6'10" and 7 feet. But when we say that, when you contextualize that, to me, that shows how special he is, because there are players who've had, Dan, like kryptonite, right? With LeBron, at some point, it was make him shoot the outside shot.
I thought you were going to say DeShaun Stevenson. Yeah, no, you're right. It's go under and make him shoot. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Go under and make him shoot. With Steph, it used to be, hey, maybe you put a body on him. You know what I mean. You get in this airspace. You know what I mean. You make him think. I think he's sort of grown out of that now. He's just not at the highest levels that he used to be. Michael Jordan was the guy that you just hoped he missed, right? You couldn't get him to turn the ball over. Maybe you could beat him up until you couldn't. But that was a guy that you had no answer for. Kobe, you had an answer for. Force him into bad shots. Maybe he makes them, maybe he misses them. But Jokic is a guy that you legit have no answers for. And to me, that is the greatest compliment that I can give him, regardless of where he ranks with Shaq and Kareem and Hakeem and all that. You just have no answers for him.
And yeah, that's exactly right. Look at what he walked through to get here. Rudy Gobert, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year.
Lunch meat.
Right? Goes through second round. Crap.
DeAndre Ayton.
Right, DeAndre Ayton had a good series against
My
him.
Baloney has a first name. It's Ayton. That's
exactly
what it
right.
is.
Food. Western Conference Finals. Anthony Davis playing, and that was the number one defense in the league since the trade deadline. They were elite. AD playing as well as he possibly could. Did not matter. Still able, and there's the famous LeBron quote at the end of that, like, even if you played 23 seconds of good defense on me, puts the ball behind his head like Bird, throws it up from 50 feet, and it goes in like feather touch. And food, sweep. This series, Bam Adebayo has not won Defensive Player of the Year, but he's, I think, a 5-time all-defensive team selection, going to be up in that mix every year. But 6'9", 255, you're giving up too much size, too much space. Everything they did, the zone, can't do it. He passes too well, he shoots too well. He will short circuit all that. Switch it, he's going to put somebody in the basket. Let him go ISO, he's putting somebody in the basket. Pick and pop. All right, now Bam, bring yourself back up to the perimeter. And if maybe it's a pump and go and a drive, or he just shoots it at 40% from three. Like, Eric Spoelstra is, if not the best, schematic game-to-game, series-to-series adjustments coach in the league on a very short list, right? Maybe him, Ty Lue,
That's the list. That's the list. Spo and Ty, and they beat those guys. They beat, You know what I mean? Though you didn't beat the Clippers.
No, but they beat the Clippers. They beat the
Phoenix.
Clippers in the bubble, and every time they've played them since then, Jokic has been absolutely comfortable in that matchup. It's not. I think you're absolutely right to point to the idea. It's not that we're like waiting to see what the defense is that can answer him, that can solve him. It's you got to figure out another way to do it outside of solving him, because the smartest coaches and the best defenders in the league were not even able to put a scratch on his armor in these 4 rounds. They went 16-4 with the highest offensive rating of any champion since the '87 Lakers, because he forces you to have to solve something else. And then when Murray's going or when Porter's going, Aaron Gordon comes up with a big game, everybody else gets to eat off of him. That's the mark of greatness. When you are a constant and an unsolvable equation that rises, also the rising tide that lifts all the boats. I don't know that you can say enough about what he is. So you're absolutely right. We don't have to worry about where he slots on what hypothetical lists right now. What we know right now is he is on the top of the world, and he's going to be there until somebody knocks him off next season.
Yeah, and I know that we like to say that our conversations about sports are a lot more sophisticated, or we like to think our conversations are a lot more sophisticated. But to me, there is something that goes along with the validation of winning the championship, of crowning, of you
absolutely.
going through the gauntlet and crowning it. And there is no metric that can account for going through the gauntlet and winning. And when you think about some of the best teams that we've seen since the playoffs have gone to 7 games in 2003 in the first round. Everything was 5 games from 84 to 03 was 5 games. And from 03 on, it's been 7 games. So 7-game series in 4 rounds. The only team that I can think of since 2003 that has been better, that has had a better run, not that has been better, but it has had a more dominant run, was the 2017 Golden State Warriors.
Yep, the KD Warriors, right.
The first year of the KD Warriors where they ran through everybody. Every champion has had moments of real doubt. Even Golden State last year when they were dealing with Memphis and then in the finals going down 2-1. You can go down the list from Milwaukee before that. If you want to count the Lakers in the bubble, so be it. Completely different circumstances. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I'm saying in what we consider the usual playoff gauntlet, right? There hasn't been a team like that, like this. Even the 15 Warriors, the 18 Warriors, they've gone through stuff. The 19 Toronto Raptors that had to go bounce. They were about to lose a series to Brett freaking Brown. Like,
Come on.
Yes.
Brett Brown catching strays on the floor here at Ball Arena? Come on.
Yes. Everybody engaged with the process will catch some strays.
Well, he's about to go through a whole new process as an assistant in San Antonio with a whole new dude that you build around like that.
Because Philly catches strays, because Philly used to come at my neck on Twitter. So we're smarter than you guys. We're going to figure it out. We got all these number 1 picks. Losing ain't no strategy. You just losers. And what have they been? Losers. Now, back to the lecture. Back to the lecture.
And I got to say, Jokic winning puts an awful big crimp in Philly's feelings right now too.
They super sensitive right now.
Yes,
they salty. They oh my God, them Philly cheesesteaks got a whole lot of Lowry salt in it, except it don't taste no type of seasoning, right? so here's where I do want to go from here. Mm-hmm. If we're going to look ahead to, not necessarily next year as a whole big picture and everything else, because Michael Malone came out and said, we want to do it again. We want to become a dynasty. I'm not sure about dynasties in today's pro sports, because leagues change over the course of like 18 months. What you thought is no longer what you thought before. We thought the Golden State Warriors were going to run the league forever. We thought the Boston Celtics were going to run the league forever. We thought Milwaukee was going to run the league this year. Stay in this moment. But beyond this season, when you look at the way that they ran through the playoffs, Dan, I think they shot 48 from the field, 40 from 3, or maybe 39 from 3, and 81 from, that's like you said, on par with the 87 Lakers as one of the best offensive outputs of all time. Have they unlocked something? Have they unlocked the arrogance of a champion that's going to carry over into next season, that the whole league should worry about them?
I think so. I mean, for one thing, all of it's built around that Jokic-Murray two-man game, right? Those guys, whatever, 6-7 years of reps together, all that time, all that growth. Jokic is 28 years old. Jamal Murray is 26 years old. They're both under contract for at least the next 2 years. Murray's extension eligible this summer. You got to believe they're going to go and they're going to back up the Brinks truck for him, make sure he stays happy and fed. Michael Porter Jr., 25, under contract through 2026. Aaron Gordon, 28 years old, 2 more years on that deal. So this core is together for the next 2 years. They absolutely love what they've gotten from Christian Braun as a rookie. Talk to people around the Nuggets. They're very big on Peyton Watson, the other rookie that they drafted.
Yeah.
Couldn't get on the floor this year, but they think he's coming. I think he's going to be an impact player for them as soon as next year. Bruce Brown, going to be an unrestricted free agent. Get your money, Bruce. You earned it. You deserve it. If it's to come back to Denver, there's a ready-made role for him, and he knows that he can be a huge impact player here. They have something that works. They've built a culture. Our guy Ben Rohrbach wrote about this today ahead of Game 5. The culture that they've built, the style of play, the selflessness, all of it that emanates from Jokic, they have something that works. Doesn't mean it's going to work every year. Doesn't mean it's going to be a championship every year. But they have something to believe in and to build on. And now they have a proof of concept. We know that when we're healthy, we can beat absolutely everybody in front of us. So whether it makes them the favorite, whether they're the odds-on favorites in Vegas to go all the way again next year, there's a long way between now and next year. But this is not. They have a million questions they've got to answer this summer. Their core is here. It's intact, and they're going to be around, and they're young. It's not a whole lot of over-the-hill gang kind of guys. So I think if you're a Western Conference general manager, a team president, executive, thinking about how you construct your team, obviously you're just trying to do the best job you can, getting the talent that you have in-house. You need to be thinking about, how do we deal with Denver? How do we deal with that two-man game? How do we deal with the athletes and the size they've got on the wing? That's the blueprint. That's the rubric that you got to measure yourself up against. And I think it's going to make for some pretty interesting moves in the offseason and moving forward because, like I said, I don't think they're going anywhere. Every time they've been healthy, they've been a problem. And this time, nobody could solve it.
Yeah, and championships are so fragile. Like, I think that's the important thing to say. Like, Golden State, it felt like last year that they had maybe figured something out. Like, they had sort of blended that 2 timeline thing, that the vets were going to stay around long enough and good long enough, and that the young guys were going to grow and mature in that Golden State incubator. And then, the punch happens and everything goes haywire, right? You thought the Lakers were going to be built to last in 2020 with a healthy LeBron, a healthy-ish Anthony Davis, have not been able to recapture it. We thought the Milwaukee Bucks were going to be the most bankable commodity in the NBA this year. As long as Giannis was healthy, as long as Chris Middleton was healthy, and now you got a new coach, and you got Chris Middleton probably going into free agency. You better embrace the now.
Absolutely.
Right? Embrace the now. But the one thing about the Nuggets for the future, especially with the new CBA and the way everything is going to kick in, they are already steps ahead of the game. They don't have to go out and acquire players outside of house. Now, maybe when it comes to second aprons and it comes to maybe taxpayer mid-levels and things like that. But here's the other part of it too, Dan. Who wouldn't want to come and play with Nikola Jokic? Who wouldn't want to come and play with a guy who makes you your best self? This is the point I was going to make about Nikola Jokic earlier, and we kind of got sidetracked. He is almost the manifestation of what we were robbed when we did not see a healthy Arvydas Sabonis. Now, that is a deep cut, y'all. I know y'all remember Arvydas Sabonis as the guy who Shaq used to throw around in Portland, but when he had 2 healthy Achilles, he was doing the Bird and Magic things when it wasn't that type of game for him to play. And it feels like Jokic is it's almost like international reparations. His Achilles wouldn't hold up, but guess who we got coming down the pike? We got Nikola Jokic, and the very first final that was televised in Nikola Jokic's home country. It was the 1988 NBA Finals. Lakers, Pistons, Magic, Worthy, Kareem, the graceful and brutish Detroit Pistons. Right. Like, he wasn't able to see that, but I felt like it's almost like a direct tie from where the league was then to give Nikola Jokic, a player like that, the vision for him to be able to come over here now and do the things that he's doing. He's one of one, but he's taking a little bit from Magic. He's taking a little bit from Bird. He's Arvydas Sabonis' love child. All of that stuff happening. And like you said, he ain't going nowhere.
28 years old, man. And first off, every listener, it's your homework. We're giving you homework here on the Good Word. Go do your Googles, go do your YouTubes, and you got to see what Arvydas Sabonis did to David Robinson when Team USA went up against the Soviet Union.
Ooh, don't do that.
Watch that video.
It led to the dream team. That led to the dream team.
Yeah, because they saw that and they were like, we need something. It's like the Avengers going to fight Thanos. Like we need a bigger weapon if we're going to go out there in these tournaments against that guy. But you're absolutely right. This is the game changes and evolves over the course of time, and it was size for the time immemorial. Size was the most important thing. Skill, the wings, Jordan, Bird, Magic. The sort of they're not 7-footers, but the wings that could control a game, control the ball. They became the most important things. It shifts back. Now the 3-point shot. Steph, as an evolution in the game. The two-way wings that can do that. Can be high volume ball handlers and shoot like that too. Your Kawhis, all that kind of stuff. Jokic, obviously not Kawhi Leonard defensively, not Michael Jordan defensively, but he's sort of the pinnacle of, or he's the synthesis of all those changes, because he brings the size, he brings the back to the basket game, he brings the post-up game, he brings the shooting, he brings the playmaking, he brings the flair with the passing, that sort of steady, solid, metronomic kind of consistency of a Duncan. All that came before led to now, and and maybe we'll be saying the same thing about a different player next year who shows a different side of his game, but it feels like this is an evolutionary moment. Size plus skill plus playmaking plus shooting, all of it together in one package. And the question, as you said, was, can he hold up defensively and can he do it on the biggest stage? Check mark, check mark. They end the playoffs with the number 3 defense in this postseason. They absolutely shut Miami's water off. Now, Miami, not a high-octane offensive team anyway, but they figured out what leg to take out and how to lean on them. And that's all you need out of a defensive team. The way that Jokic put this together and the way that they put things together around Jokic is now going to be, I think, the blueprint moving forward. It's now going to be the high water mark that other teams need to reach for. And where he goes from here, 28 years old, maybe not even at his peak yet. Scary thought.
I mean, who knows if he is? You know what I mean? I think there's something that comes along with there's a confidence that comes along with being a champion. That you walk into a building, any building, you're not fazed. There's no moment that's too big for you. And I think you're going to see the Denver Nuggets embrace that at some point, especially starting next year with Michael Malone. Before we go, how do we evaluate the Miami Heat? Because I believe they knocked off, in my opinion, 2 of the 3 best teams in the NBA this year in the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks. And while there was no dominant NBA team this year, Miami went on a really, really impressive run up until they ran up against this buzzsaw. If you are Pat Riley and you have done this with the tryhards, and you have Jimmy Butler at 33 years old, and you have Bam Adebayo, and you have presumably Tyler Hero coming back on the first year of a max, is it not incumbent upon you to go all in? Not to be cold-hearted to the Struces and Gabe Vincents and everybody's. Gabe Vincent is going to get paid by somebody. Maybe Max Strus gets paid by somebody. But where do they go from it? Do you go all in for Dame Lillard? Because they've gotten to the finals 2 times in 4 years. To me, Jimmy Butler still wants to get over the top. That man looked dejected tonight in his press conference. Like, where do you go if you're the Miami Heat?
Yeah, well, Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra will have nothing but praise for the effort that they got out of this roster. But we also know that Pat Riley looks at it. There's 2 things. There's 2 poles. There's winning and there's misery, right? Sort of famed Riley quote. Mm-hmm. So
there's no rebounds, no rings, and they ain't get that in Game 3.
Well, yeah, they got absolutely drilled on the boards again tonight. Just the size difference all series long. This was such a huge, huge hill for them to climb. They never were able to get over the top of it. But they're close is not good enough for the Miami Heat. That's not what that organization has ever played for. The only, I think, immovable pieces are Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. I think Kyle Lowry had a pretty fantastic postseason run for them, given where he's at in his career and what he was able to give them for lots of the regular season. But $29.7 million expiring contract next season. That's a big meatball to be able to maybe build something around. Hero, that's real. That's like $120 million question. If Tyler Hero's your third best player, how good a team are you? What kind of sacrifices do you need to make on the defensive end to make him a palatable option deep in playoff series? It's perhaps not a coincidence that when they started playing guys who you couldn't pick on defense, their roster kind of clicked into place in that Milwaukee series a little bit more.
Yeah, it did.
I think if Dame is a legitimate option for them, of course they're going to explore it. The Heat, every star the Heat will get a hearing with them. Every big name will look at this and say, especially a big name that believes in the grind, right? That pledges allegiance to the grind in that way, looks at the Miami Heat and says, I could do that too. That's a place that fits me. It's not for everybody, but those guys are always going to want to have that opportunity because it's South Beach, it's no tax, and it's also one of the most successful organizations over the past couple of decades. So they will hunt for big swings. Maybe those will come to fruition. Maybe they won't. The unsaid part of the Dame thing is like he said like if that was my four options, then that Miami's the number one. But he seems to be pretty happy staying at the crib. I don't know if he's gonna want to continue doing that, but
I think he likes being wanted.
I think he does. I mean, who among us doesn't, Vinny? Who doesn't? I'm waiting for more friends to come over and start throwing some more confetti on me. I want to be wanted in that way. But I think the Heat will start, if
Ask
nothing
someone
else.
Throw some confetti over near you.
See what
you asked for.
I'm speaking it into existence. I'm manifesting what I want to have happen in the world. But the thing to remember with the Heat, too, like they caught this 2-month heater. 44-38 team this season, outscored over the course of the regular season by 26 points. Bottom 5 offense. A lot of that was injuries. A lot of that was they had to play, I believe, the most starting lineups of any team in the NBA this season. There was just no consistency for them. It was impossible for them to establish a rhythm until they got their roster together in the postseason. But you're not starting from the same peak that somebody like Denver is as you look into next season. You're starting at an 8 seed. And maybe that was never the full accurate evaluation of their talent, but there's still, they need to be in an additive position. They seem to be thinking about, we have to level up our offensive shot creation, which we saw time and again in this series. When Jimmy wasn't able to get anything going, when those shooters couldn't get loose, it was, can Bam make something happen in the short roll? And everybody's going to let him take 25 10-footers and see if you can win that way, if you can score enough to win. So offensive talent's got to be at a premium. Some more size has to be at a premium. Not easy to come by when you're paying so many big deals, but this is what Pat Riley and Andy Ellisberg and that whole front office, that's where they make their money. So they're going to be creative, they're going to be active, and they've got a hell of a sales pitch. Jimmy, Bam, South Beach, Spo, let's go get something done.
Hey, Dan, I don't know if you know, we don't have any games to cover tomorrow. We don't have any practices or availabilities. No more flights to get on besides the flight to go home. So it's a weird feeling that there's no game 6. It's a weird feeling there's no next game. But man, it's been a fun ride this year.
Absolutely, man.
It's been a fun ride for the NBA season. It's been a fun ride jumpstarting this podcast and having you on today. There's nobody I'd rather have on today, having you here watching this game and, having to watch the coronation, the culmination of the Denver Nuggets, man. It's been a fun ride, and we want to thank everybody who's listened. We appreciate everybody for joining in. There's going to be more. We're going to be back. I'm just putting a bow on this season because I'm sure John Gennaro will have me back next week on Monday for my usual thing. But to put a bow on the season, we really appreciate everybody. Don't forget to rate us and review us. Don't also forget to remember and think of the people who helped put this podcast together. John Gennaro, Ron Schultz, Evan Doherty, like guys that really, really put in the grind, the Miami Heat grind without all of the South Beach trinkets and everything else. But I really appreciate everybody for joining that. I appreciate the platform. And we will see you next week. Summer League, the draft, basketball don't stop. Basketball is life. Everybody be safe. Don't forget to watch us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, rate us, review us, all that stuff, man. Everybody be safe. Have a good one Tuesday morning or whenever you guys take this.